You take a break. You scroll through your phone. You watch a few videos. Maybe you grab a snack or stare out the window for a while. And when you come back, you don't feel rested. You feel exactly the same, maybe even worse. You tell yourself you're just burnt out, that you need a longer break, that maybe you're not doing rest correctly. But here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't that you're bad at resting. The problem is that what you're calling a break isn't actually a break at all. We've been taught that breaks are supposed to recharge us, step away from work, do something else, come back refreshed. That's the idea. So when it doesn't work, when we return to our desk feeling just as drained, we assume something is wrong with us. We think we need to try harder, rest better, be more disciplined about our downtime. But the issue runs deeper than that. Most of what we do during breaks doesn't give our brain what it actually needs to recover. It gives us something else entirely. Distraction, stimulation, a different kind of demand. And your brain can tell the difference even if you can't. Research on cognitive recovery shows that rest isn't just about stopping work. It's about what your brain does when you stop. And most of the time, when we step away from a task, we're not letting our brain rest. We're just redirecting it to something else that also requires effort. Scrolling through social media, for example, feels passive. It feels like you're doing nothing, but your brain is processing faces, text, emotional cues, comparisons, notifications. It's working, constantly. The same goes for watching videos, checking messages, or even just letting your mind wander through your to-do list. These activities don't demand physical effort, so we categorize them as rest. But cognitively, they're still active. Your attention is still being pulled. Your brain is still making decisions, even small ones, about where to look, what to click, what to think about next. True cognitive rest happens when your brain isn't being asked to process new information, make decisions, or stay alert to stimuli. It happens in states of low demand, sitting quietly without input, staring at something unchanging like a wall or the sky, letting your thoughts settle without directing them anywhere. These are the conditions under which the brain actually begins to recover, and most of us almost never create them. There's a specific system in your brain that only activates when you're not focused on something external. It's called the default mode network. It kicks in during rest, but only real rest. The kind where you're not consuming content or solving problems or staying engaged with something. When this network is active, your brain does background maintenance. It processes emotions, consolidates memories, makes connections between ideas you didn't know were related. This is where insight happens. This is where you actually recharge. But if you're on your phone during your break, that network doesn't turn on. If you're watching something, scrolling, reading, even listening to a podcast, your brain stays in task mode. It's still receiving, still responding. The default mode network stays offline, and without it, there's no real recovery. You're just switching between different types of effort. Think about your last few breaks. What did you actually do? You probably picked up your phone within seconds. Maybe you opened an app without even deciding to. Maybe you watched something you weren't even interested in, just because it was there. Or maybe you sat there thinking about everything you still had to do, replanning your day, mentally rehearsing a conversation. None of that is rest. It's all activity, it's all demand. And here's the uncomfortable part. We know this. On some level, we know that scrolling doesn't make us feel better. We know that binge watching during a break doesn't lead to clarity or energy. But we do it anyway because the alternative feels unbearable. Sitting with nothing feels wrong. It feels wasteful. It feels like we're not optimizing our time. So we fill the space. We keep our brain occupied, even during rest, because stopping completely feels too close to doing nothing. And we've been taught that doing nothing is failure. But doing nothing is not the same as rest. Rest has a function. It's not emptiness. It's repair. And repair requires stillness, not replacement activity. When you deny your brain that stillness, you don't recover. You just delay the crash. You stack fatigue on top of fatigue until even your breaks feel exhausting, until you can't remember the last time you actually felt rested. This doesn't mean all breaks are pointless. It doesn't mean every moment of downtime has to be silent meditation. But it does mean that if your break looks exactly like low-stakes work, if it's just different content on the same screen, it's not giving you what you think it is. You're not resting. You're just context switching. And context switching has a cost. There's also the issue of what you're recovering from. If your work involves staring at a screen and processing information, and your break involves staring at a different screen and processing different information, you haven't changed the demand. You've only changed the topic. Your eyes are still focused at the same distance. Your attention is still being managed externally. Your brain is still in reception mode. The system that's tired doesn't get a break. It just gets a different task. Real rest would mean stepping away from the screen entirely, looking at something far away, letting your eyes relax, letting your attention drift without direction, sitting outside for a few minutes without your phone, walking slowly without listening to anything, staring at the ceiling. These sound boring because they are, and that's exactly why they work. Boredom is a feature, not a flaw. It's the signal that your brain has stopped working and started recovering. But we've become so uncomfortable with boredom that we've eliminated it entirely. We've turned every gap in activity into an opportunity for content. Every waiting room, every commute, every moment between tasks is now filled. We don't experience stillness anymore. And without stillness, we don't experience rest. We just experience a constant low hum of effort that never quite resolves. And the feeling you get from that is hard to name. It's not exhaustion, exactly. It's not burnout in the traditional sense. It's more like a background static that never goes away. A sense that you're always slightly behind, always slightly drained, even when you've technically had time off. You sleep, you take weekends, you go on vacation, and still, you come back feeling like you never really left. Because mentally, you didn't. You stayed engaged. You stayed in the same mode. You never actually stopped. This isn't about blaming phones or screens or modern life. It's about recognizing that the way we've structured our downtime doesn't align with how recovery actually works. We treat breaks like a change of scenery, when what we need is a change of state. And most of the time, we're not giving ourselves that. We're not allowing the shift from doing to not doing. We're just moving from one form of doing to another. It also doesn't mean you have to become someone who meditates or takes long walks in silence or sits in a dark room staring at nothing. You don't have to perform rest. But it does mean that if you keep taking breaks that don't make you feel rested, it's worth asking what those breaks actually consist of, what you're doing during them, what your brain is being asked to manage, even in the background. Because if the answer is anything, then you're not resting, you're coping. And coping isn't the same as recovering. Rest is not a reward. It's not something you earn after you've done enough. It's a biological process. And like any process, it has conditions. It requires certain inputs. And one of those inputs is nothing, actual nothing. Not entertainment, not distraction, not even mental planning. Just space, just silence, just a few minutes where your brain is allowed to do what it does when no one is asking it to perform. And in those moments, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, quietly the static fades. And you start to feel like yourself again.